Maverick podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Kathy Rose, and I welcome all the free spirits. I welcome the independent souls. I even welcome the rebels. We need to travel together and support each other because we tend to operate as a tribe of one. Today, I have a very special guest for the podcast. Her name is Diane Samsel. She is a gifted astrologer, an artist, and also an animal communicator. So welcome, Diane. Come on board and let's get this rolling.
Hey, Kathy.
Hello, there you are.
Yeah, thanks for that lovely introduction.
Yes. Diane's been a good friend for a long time. She's in North Carolina, living in the mountains, in the wild, right? And you're a wild woman.
all of the above are true. I cannot deny. I think you and I go back some lifetimes as pirates also, don't you think?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So if I were to ask you what your understanding of a maverick would be and how you fit into that category, tell me about how you experience maverick energy.
All my life, I've been an outsider. And, I watched that lovely podcast you did with Pam Gregory, and I see she also has an unaspected sun as I do. Hers is in the 4th house. Well, mine's in the 3rd house. And it's in Aquarius. And it is trining Uranus on the cusp of the 7th. So you can see that I am totally checked out in the mental department from relationships. I really, I think when I got my grades from school, teacher always said, Diane daydreams a lot. So I really did build castles in the air and I lived in them.
Same here.
Yeah.
And I can do that in conversations too.
Yeah.
I can run 2 tracks all the time. I can come back and respond when need be, but I go bye-bye if the conversation goes too long.
Exactly. And I'm constantly checking myself. Am I listening? Because with that unaspected 3rd house Iranian sun, I don't listen with a toot. I have had to train myself to listen.
But you also do your own thing. You're very independent. You don't necessarily fit into groups for the sake of fitting into groups. You have kept your originality.
All my life. And when I was a teenager, it sort of runs in my father's side of the family. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a beatnik. And so I got the candles and the black turtleneck, and I went to the local coffee houses, and my father thought it was wonderful. My mother, who's a Southern belle, was horrified. So I remember that was my rebellion. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the need to have your own style is one of the maverick characteristics. Yeah. And not to worry about whether you fit in or not.
Yeah, and I attracted mavericks such as yourself. I mean, when we met, it was like, oh, kindred spirit. But exactly. I used to babysit when I was in my teens. I babysat for Kim Kesey, that wonderful ultra maverick out in California. Well, he lived in Oregon, actually. And he'd come down to Esalen Institute where I was working as a teenager. And he would babysit for his kids. And so I got introduced to the world of really incredible maverickness as an adolescent. I just never let go.
And it didn't scare you. That's the thing.
No.
Somebody who is not wired to the frequency of maverickism, sometimes it scares them to be different. Sometimes it creates conflict within to step outside of the tribe. And that's okay because that's who they are.
Well, I had an Aunt Dorothy Tennessee Samsel, and her nickname was Wimpy. Oh, don't ask me why, it's horrible, but she was my guiding star, and she was very much a maverick. Back in the 50s, she was into yoga, and she ate yogurt, and my mother thought she was the worst influence on me. She was going to psychic fairs in the 50s, if you can imagine.
And you were just gobbling it up, saying, yes,
gosh,
bring it on.
We would be assigned at the farmhouse in Oregon. We would be assigned to the same bedroom. And she would tell me wild stories at night. She'd make up these incredible stories, and they usually involved a panda that could ride moonbeams up to the stars. So I didn't have a chance. Normalcy was just not on my menu, Kathy.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, it is who you were, who you are. So of course you would resonate to that frequency, and it would open your heart. You know, I just recently gave that class to the astrology community about reading children's charts mindfully. And one of the things I focused on in that is one of the reasons perhaps we want to interpret children's charts astrologically is to help the parents understand the child's needs. Exactly. And how the child's needs may be different than the parents' needs. And if you have a maverick child like you, with a mother who's not, it's helpful for the mother to understand you must rock the boat. You must make waves. You must be original to be true to yourself.
That if a parent could be open to that, that would be wonderful. And I'm so happy that we had guests last month visiting, and there were 3 little children, 7, 8, and 9, and they all wanted their astrology read. It's like when they found out I was an astrologer, it was, okay, who am I? And I thought, wow, this is really great. This is coming up, you know, that people will be a lot more open to it in the years to come.
It's very helpful to the parents. I gave an exercise to the people who were attending the class, and I said, I would suggest you take your chart, print it out, take your parents' charts, print them out, put them all 3 on the table in front of you, and pretend you are the astrologer reading for your parents. And in a tape or in a recording, verbalize how that astrologer would talk to the parents about your chart. And, you know, that can be so helpful on so many levels. What if you have a maverick parent who has a child who is not a maverick?
Exactly.
I mean, because we tend to project our own view. Well, now back to you, though. You have a special ability that we have to talk about. Many special abilities.
Well, thank you.
You're an animal communicator, and you also are a kindred spirit with synesthesia.
Synesthesia, oh boy.
Now, in the last podcast I did, I talked again to Pam Gregory for the second time, and we talked about synesthesia, and I introduced the concept to her. And we talked about the concept, and I had mentioned that I was going to have you on next, and you have full-blown synesthesia like I do.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that and how the world looks differently when you are viewing it through cross connections of senses, right?
I didn't really understand my synesthesia until the 90s, and I was traveling on an interstate listening to NPR when they first interviewed Temple Grandin, who is the autistic woman, and she talked about visual thinking. So I was thinking today that how that was such an eye-opener for me, because it's very hard for me to remember that I listened to that Audible book or I read that book, because in my mind, they're stored as movies. So I experience everything visually. And that's I guess a hallmark of autism. And I often wonder if I'm on the scale. It's like I had to learn social skills. My mother's was one of the most socially skilled, nuanced women on the planet, being Southern. And she was horrified. Like she had to pound those lessons into me, how to respond appropriately. And so I think what is most operative in my life right now is that everything comes to me visually. Mm-hmm. Even if you say it, you sing it, I see it. I don't remember it as words. Do you have that too?
Yes, I do. And in the very first episode of this podcast series, I interviewed my good friend Pete Sanders, the founder of the Free Soul organization. And we talked about the 4 psychic senses and how everybody has all 4, but we tend to have one sense that is the strongest. And I am a visual type. You're a visual type. So we convert a lot to pictures. Intuitively, you'll get information probably through vision, as well as you experience information in life, you convert it to vision also.
Exactly. And speaking of the 4 senses, I'm also very empathic. Mm-hmm. So I can feel what your sensations are. I can feel them. And that helps me in my animal communication. I work a lot with animals. People call me just because they want to know why their horse is, favoring their right front leg or something, or what's going on with my cat here. So I can just tune in. And by the way, I use astrology as a tool to help me guide me through what are the energies of the planets right now. And that's an incredible guide to get me to focus very quickly.
Yes, your book, The Magical Language of the Heart, which is absolutely wonderful. And you talk about how other people can start learning to do animal communication. And you also talk about the astrology part of it. I highly recommend the book. Again, Diane Samsel, The Magical Language of the Heart. Great book. If you're interested in this topic, go get it. It's fabulous. But the empathic part, I know you also did Aikido and you got your black belt, and I did Taekwondo and got my black belt. And I know that the empathic part and the synesthesia part of feeling what other people feel did not help me in sparring, because there would be times if I laid a really good kick on someone, or if I was too aggressive, which I was prone to doing, I could feel the impact it had on them. And then I would have to back off. Or if I was watching other people spar, I could feel the blows that each other, were experiencing.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it was hard.
When I do Aikido, the number 1 tenet of Aikido is avoid the conflict. Mm-hmm. So with my psychic sense, I could just know what was going on with my Aikido partner, and I had a lot of fun with it. Mm-hmm. And it's not like I tried Taekwondo, and I was good at sparring because I've got Pluto, Quindachile, Mars in the 5th, ruling the 5th, excuse me, and I enjoy fighting. And by the way, I think your sun is conjoined my Venus, isn't it?
Your moon. I have a late Scorpio sun. Yeah.
Moon. So, and with our black belts, I think it's really a miracle we are friends. I wouldn't want to be your sparring partner.
Well, you can imagine the way I would spar. I have moon in Aries, and I had a very strong Korean master, very young, elite athlete. He was like Olympic level. He was incredible. Boy. And he always used to chastise me because my immediate response in sparring was, he would say, okay, go. And I would attack like a frenzy. Exactly. I mean, nanosecond, and I'm attacking, and he would chastise me, saying, wait, why don't you just counter attack? And it's like, that's not even in my brain. No. Why would I want to wait to counterattack when I can just jump in and attack? But that's another subject.
Yeah, that's right. Your moons can join my Venus in Aries. That's right. And I got that assertiveness right off the bat. I really, because Venus, Venus in Aries in the 4th, I'm a competitive hostess. Where is your moon?
In the 11th. Yeah.
In the 11th. So yeah, you're a leader. You're very much the leader of our astrology group. We all look up to you.
Thank you. Well, so, you're multi-talented, And the animal communication certainly dominates your purpose, right?
Exactly.
I would think that that's at the top of your list.
It is.
Mm-hmm. And that you do it professionally. You have many clients that you serve.
I do. And then they're all over the world. And by the way, about 10 years ago or longer, I was the first animal communicator, to teach astrology for animal communicators. And recently, I've noticed young astrologers are popping up as animal communicators. So I'm quite pleased with that.
Yes, run with it.
My animal communication really, because it really allows me to use all of my talents and loves and passions in life. That's how I build relationships, through that usually.
Yes.
And then people will say, well, do you do astrology? I'd like to have my astrology done. And it will go from there.
Well, you had mentioned earlier that you had to learn social skills and you had a mother who was very good at that. If you Google Mavericks and Maverickisms and you read the articles that many psychologists have posted, they will say Mavericks are not usually the best in social arenas because of the independence, because of the creativity, because of the speed in which they get information, and because of their innate need to sort of be in charge or be a leader in some way. It's typical. And it's not that Mavericks are bad in social situations. It's just this idea that we are supposed to respond in a certain way in order to be accepted is not what a Maverick embraces.
I don't know how many times I've made a very brilliant comment or joke in a social group and just looked around. Everyone's like, oh.
And nobody gets it. Yeah. And
Nobody
you're laughing in your own universe.
Yeah.
It's
like, okay, it's really funny. You and I both have a lot of intuitive skills. I mean, and I was, I studied shamanism way back. Did you study shamanism?
I didn't study it. I just sort of know it.
Okay, so you just walked into it. Well, I went from a yuppie. I was a businesswoman before I did this. And I sort of got blown into the world of shamanism quite unexpectedly, but I learned in that course of study, I actually had Chief Two Trees, who was a wonderful Cherokee medicine man and tribal council chief up here in North Carolina, and I studied with him for a lot. He just gave me terrific teachings, and one of them that I learned is that people who are born to shamanism have death experiences as children or infants. Have you had that?
I came close, yes.
Came close? How old were you?
11 months old.
Yeah, I was about 3 months old when I actually did die. I suffocated and was resuscitated. So, in the world of autism, they say people are not people with autism or Asperger's are not neurotypical. So I've sort of embraced the fact that I am not neurotypical. Mm-hmm. And that's helped me a lot to just, I really do think I'm from another planet in a way. I mean, I don't think I'm from another planet. I know I was born on this earth, but my wiring is so different.
I get it. I really do. I get it. Now, I understand what you are saying. Yeah, totally.
Now, do you think that this is something new to humanity, or have there always been us non-neurotypicals?
Oh, I think it's always been. Okay. I do. It's just we have this awesome opportunity now to share information so easily 24/7, across the globe, which didn't happen until, the last 20 years or so. And I think that's factored into education. I also think again, it breaks my heart when I am talking to parents or clients, a client who may be a Maverick type who said, my mom or dad tried to control me or corral me or make me normal. And I didn't want to be normal.
Right.
I wanted to be extraordinary. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be unique, or the other way around. I had one client who was raised by a Southern Belle type of mother, very proper. And the mother had said, your job, she said this to her daughter, your job is to marry a man who makes a lot of money, and your job is to look good on his arm.
Oh my God.
And that's your job. And your job is to be pleasant and beautiful and helpful. And the woman, the daughter who became my client, was really a Maverick type, but she had such intense programming from the parents. And the programming was, we will love you if you act normally. Yeah. We will love you if you act this way. You will get our approval. You will get our applause and our attention. But if you don't act normally, you're not going to get it. So she squashed all of that Maverick independence and became what they wanted her to be. And she would, and one time in a consultation, I said, what's your real inner image? She did marry a wealthy man, and she'd had, a lot of plastic surgery. She looked gorgeous and wonderful. She was doing her programming. She said, I really just want to wear a mini skirt and red cowboy boots and a big floppy hat. And then she goes, but I'm horrified to even say that. Oh, that's so naughty. And I said, are you kidding? Look at me. Look at what I'm wearing, because it was an in-person consultation.
Was she all matchy?
She was beautifully perfect. Yeah, beautifully perfect. I mean, and she was communicating to me that she was desperately desiring to be her original self, but didn't feel comfortable. Now, she ended up finding it, and a lot of women do after menopause.
Right.
Menopause serves that purpose. Something snaps and we go, oh, I'm just going to be who I am. And she did. But my point is giving permission for the Maverick to be the Maverick, and to love and approve of themselves, and to know that being different isn't necessarily a bad thing.
It's not. It's a lot of fun. I think of it as the hero's journey. Know, you start out in a comfy little nest, and then you just outgrow it, and you have to jump out. And that's so terrifying. And for women who've been programmed to be nice, there's some skill sets you need to learn that very few people are just going to teach you outright. Although today, I think it's much easier for girls. Look at Title IX and all the laws that prevent, the sex abuse laws alone are protecting girls. So boys, but I think you're right. I think it's just not an easy trip to take. And I remember in high school, I grew up in Newport Beach, and my mother had me on a social path to become a debutante. And one of my first pleasures in life was to be the first person in this group, debutante group, in Orange County of all places, just to decline my debut. It was like, yes, I was working. I was 18. I was working. I had hitchhiked to Big Sur from Newport Beach. I put on my hippie clothes and my hippie beads, got rid of my uniform, and I hitchhiked to Esalen and got a job cleaning cabins and being a waitress, whatever I could do, meeting all these fabulous people from around the world. And then when the fall came and it was time I was with another girlfriend from Newport Beach, she got rid of her hippie clothes, put on the white dress, and debuted with the long leather. And I was like, how could you do that, girl? I just never went back from that moment on.
We each have to do our own path in our own way. And the thing is, somebody who does the debutante path, if that's right for them, then I applaud them and do it spectacularly.
Yes,
but
exactly. But not a maverick.
Yeah, it would strangle
no way
me.
to do it as a maverick.
Yeah.
No.
And in the end, I always want people to know they can learn to sense at heightened levels.
Yes.
And get their own information and go directly to the universe and get it.
Right.
That again is true to the maverick within me. You are capable.
You didn't listen to them when they said, you cannot do that. Oh, I love those words. You can't do that.
Well, if I heard the words, you can't do that, it converted in my mind to, you must do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like waving a red flag in front of a bull.
Exactly.
And that's very common for mavericks is, to do that, to respond in that way. As a matter of fact, speaking of animal communication, now that I'm watching my daughter's dog frequently, the wonderful boxer, Hudson, who is just a year and 3 months old now. What happened for me was I grew up with pets, but also had massive allergies. Yeah. So my entire childhood, I was just an allergic mess. I mean, I don't think I was able to breathe through my nose for my entire childhood.
So your family had pets?
Yes, we had pets. And then at age 18, it moved into asthma reaction to animals. Yeah. So then it became life-threatening, and I came close to death one time, even just from an allergic reaction that went into asthma. Oh. So for a long time, from about age 18 until recently, I had to stay away from animals. And that means couldn't even touch them because I would get hives. And I would, when it comes to asthma and not being able to breathe, you make a choice. Okay, suffocation or pet the animal. I think I'll avoid petting the animal, right? But I had to shut down my love of animals for all that time. I had to compartmentalize it. Then when my daughter got this little beautiful boxer puppy, I thought to myself, I wonder if I have healed it, because it was my intention the whole time to heal it. I just didn't want to take the risk. But then she brought this little puppy and I said, I must touch that puppy. I don't even care. I'm outside. I'll touch it. I'll take some Benadryl. And darned if I did not react. And it was the most beautiful thing, because finally I could feel the love of an animal and I could open that little part of my heart again. And the animal communication came right back to me. The understanding of how to communicate, how to hear their little voice. I mean, he and I have conversations constantly on certain levels.
The more I talk with animals and the more they teach me, and the more I talk with my clients, the more I realize that we're just energetic fields having these relationships. And how you get information, this is what I teach in my workshops, is your body's an instrument, and you should just honor any information that comes through. And it's coming through on a cellular level. Every single cell has a little ego and a little way of bringing in information, and you should just honor however that comes in. So when I'm talking with animals, that very frequently people who no longer have bodies will come through. And I've got some great stories about that. But when animals die and then they reincarnate, people sometimes are desperate to know, will I miss my animal? And how it works really is that the soul picks the body and then lets you know. Mm-hmm. And animal souls are always doing walk-ins. So mm-hmm. they may walk into a body and look at you through those eyes and say, nah, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people, if an animal comes into your life and you look in their eyes and you start crying because you recognize that heart, that's your animal visiting you again.
Believe it.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It's true. And animals very often in spirit will do walk-ins and they'll confuse you. But I have a dog in spirit. Her name's Sarah, and Sarah will do walk-ins when I'm like at the park or something, and there's a puppy, because it's much easier with young dogs. And she'll do a walk-in in that puppy and just drag the person over and jump in my lap. And I've had quite a few interesting encounters that way.
So when you were communicating with animals, you're getting it in feeling, but you're also getting it in pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I bet it just pops into your head and you know.
Yeah, that's called psychic knowing or psychic email. Well, actually, there's 4 there. That's one of the top 4s is just knowing. And sometimes you'll just download an entire story and you'll know it's true. And that's pretty phenomenal, because when you get stories and then you relate them to the people, it's very flabbergasting in a way. But also you can smell.
I've had psychics smell before many, many times.
And so that's all synesthesia. I mean, you're just getting this cross. I had a woman who was a bartender, and she had she couldn't smell. And she had a cat that seemed to be going psychotic. And when I talked to the cat said, it's the cinnamon. I could smell this. Oh, no, the cat didn't know, excuse me. The cat didn't know what was bothering her, but I could smell this overwhelming smell of cinnamon. And I mentioned this to the woman, and I said, your cat's bothered by the smell of cinnamon. And she said, oh my gosh, I can't smell anything. So I put cinnamon glade in all the outlets. And her home was evidently overwhelmed with this. And it was a synthetic cinnamon, which to me, I hate synthetic smells. They offend me.
Right. The frequency is not authentic. It's a lie.
Get your lie out of my face or my nose. Yeah. And I can taste also.
Yes. Yes. Synesthesia can convert things into taste or smells or colors or shapes. When I talked with Pam Gregory in the last podcast, I had mentioned to her that I convert people's voices into shapes and patterns and colors. And Noel Till, our friend and teacher, who was an opera star with that big booming voice, and my own husband, who has a big booming broadcast voice, their voices have certain shapes to them. And I had asked Noel, because sometimes I convert voices to instruments in the orchestra.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful.
And I said, Noel, don't you do that? I mean, you're a musician, you're an opera star. And he looked at me like I was from another universe. Seriously. He said, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's like, okay.
He used to tell us he was a Ferrari mechanic.
Yes.
I think it's so wonderful that he was that way. He was very nuts and bolts. And that the day I knew that there was a side of him that he was denying was in class that time when you put us all into the different classes for the Harry Potter, like Dumbledore and Slytherin. And you put the hats on him. Oh, that was so wonderful. Yes. I could say, there's a side of Noel I had never seen before.
Well, now that's a classic example of Maverick. So to just explain to the listeners, Noel Till, in one of the student seminars we were giving, was giving me an opportunity to teach. And he wanted me to give a little teaching section on vocational astrology. And so without telling him, I decided I would teach it from the perspective of, when you are doing vocational astrology, you are really sorting them into different channels. Is their vocation a communication channel, a creative channel, a business channel, a helping healing channel, and so forth. So I thought, I'm just going to use the Harry Potter sorting hat. And I created this big skit, and I got a Dumbledore hat to put on Noel. And a cape, and he didn't know I was going to do it. I sprung it on him. Now that is Maverick, in that I had to do it my own way. I had to be original. I know he was expecting me to just teach in a conservative, normal, traditional way, and I didn't. And I didn't tell him.
And I saw him transform in that moment, and I was thrilled. I guess that Mavericks do that for people. They just break open something that's never been broken open.
That is exactly what mavericks can do with other people. They act as catalysts and seed planters.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly see that in my practice when people realize that animal communication is real and it's not, the beaded curtain and the crystal ball thing, that their animals, and, they'll be sitting in the room and I'll be talking with their animals 3,000 miles away, and they're noticing the animals are making faces and they're looking straight at the phone. And they're just really flabbergasted that this is a real thing, and
it is.
Yeah.
Our capacity to interact with other dimensions and other dimensional laws, which most people have no idea about yet, but it's coming. It's coming. There's this acceleration where all of a sudden different parts of our brains are going to start activating. And synesthesia is a very active brain. That cross connection of senses, it's like it takes left brain, right brain, and connects them in the middle.
And what I learn in teaching is the biggest obstacle of people learning this skill is they don't trust themselves. They're actually listening to a little young self that became verbal dominant at the age of whatever. At 4, you're talking to your animal. But then at 5, you're beginning to wonder, and by 6, by the time you've gone to school, it's furthest from your mind. And so people, when I teach them this skill, a lot of them know it. In fact, my most brilliant student ever was literally a rocket scientist from NASA. He was this young man with a ponytail, and he was a PhD nuclear physicist, and he could talk to anything that breathed. He could talk to things that didn't breathe. The man was genius. I mean, all his channels were open, but for the rest of us, just trusting what we're getting and knowing it's the truth, that's the real path.
Well, because it requires courage and it requires confidence, and it requires questioning being, quote, normal.
And it requires a skill that a lot of us don't have, and that's the skill of surrender.
Yes. Surrender, and that requires confidence too.
I had a student who had one of the biggest shelters in the state she lived in. I have her permission to tell this story, and I think it's in my book, but she did this out of her own pocketbook. She was a businesswoman, and she ran this, and she was just such a gift to the whole state. And she came to my workshop and she couldn't get it. And she was in tears. And it was a 3-day workshop. And by the last 30 minutes, the last half of the last day, she spent crying because she couldn't do it. And everyone else, was doing it. Everyone was just flying. And she was in tears. And finally, in the last 15 minutes, her heart opened, her doubts disappeared, and she was like flying with the rest of us.
Probably for that client, being in tears helped her.
Yeah.
To get it out so that you do open up.
There's a lot of grief that people, expect children, hold on to, because the adults and the teachers and the church people are all saying, you can't do that. That's you're making that up. Of course you're making it up. Life is just one big creation. And what's wrong with that?
That's a great quote. That's a bumper sticker right there.
You're making it all up as you go, right?
Life is one big creation, and it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, The Magical Language of the Heart. What a great title for the book. And I hope it's been a big success. And I hope a lot of the people listening will go out and get it.
I hope so too. Thank you.
It's a lot of good information. Diane, thank you so much for this conversation. You're genuinely a beautiful soul, and I've enjoyed it very much.
And thank you for letting me spend some time with you, Kathy. I always love that.
Yeah, my pleasure. We'll talk again. And like I say to people, till next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.